into the revamped NetScaler podcast session with your host here, Chris Dorn. This is the third season, first episode in the third season as we're revamping to align with the revamping of the NetScaler technology stack and the go-to-market. And joining me today, I have John Clayman with CSG, and he's focusing and working in the as a solutions engineer with NetScaler. Justin Weldon is here. He works with us on a day-to-day basis, hoping to deliver and provide solutions for XenTegra's customers around the NetScaler side. And Isrrael Quintero, which some of you guys might be familiar with, that helps me as my co-host on the Fortinet session. He's joining as well, so bleeding over a little bit into the NetScaler area. So welcome, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for being here today. Very cool. We've got a blog that we're going to check out here. We're looking at the innovations in load balancing, looking at the better performance and lower cost that can be achieved with a NetScaler solution. And I learned something new from this blog myself. I was unaware of the jump table assisted ring hash, or JARH for short, which is the load balancing algorithm that NetScaler actually uses. So wanted to kind of focus the podcast itself in this area and look at this blog post from Citrix proper, and kind of discuss that a little bit about the technology itself, the benefits that it can introduce and provide our customers, and then what kind of separates that and differentiates the technology from some of the competition. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Howdy. Great.
Howdy. So, yeah, Justin, great having you on. Looking forward to this series as we get it kind of kicked off here. This is a new way of looking at it. I think previously I myself kind of made it a little too technical, a little too rigid. So looking to have a little bit more of a laid back experience and listening pleasure for our listeners out there in the world. Maybe a little bit about myself. I've been here almost 10 years at XenTegra, and I spent a lot of time doing the CVAD deployments, which of course included the NetScaler technology, and found that was kind of a sweet spot for myself, not being a super network savvy person. This kind of played into my ability to kind of grasp something that I was able to see a lot of benefits to the virtualization stack with. So as it grew through the years, I really developed a lot of skills around that and really grew very fond of the technology itself. And I think that's pretty similar for the rest of you guys here on the meeting here. So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself. We'll start with Justin, and we can roll over to John and then Isrrael.
Hey, Chris, thanks. As Chris mentioned, my name is Justin Weldon. I started my Citrix journey with Citrix Consulting many moons ago, and that was in the VDI space. But then I slowly started moving over to the networking side of the house, where I've been ever since, and focusing on NetScaler, cloud security type stuff, all the fun new pieces of tech that keep us interested and banging our heads against the wall sometimes.
Yeah, keeping us on our toes for sure. Something new every week, it seems. And John, appreciate you stepping in and joining us today. Thanks for being here. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I mean, you guys get to deal with me instead of the wonder Jeremy. So started with Citrix about 5 years ago as a network sales engineer. I've been working with NetScaler now about 10 years or so. So covered everything from as far as my background's concerned, NetScaler, virtualization, both on competitor to Xen server, as well as our DAS or CVAD infrastructure. So, and I've got a tenure with Citrix products as well as the infrastructure it's tied to.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And Isrrael. Oh yeah, for sure. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. If you guys don't know me, Isrrael Quintero, I'm one of the SEs or SAs for anything with network and security, and I'm getting my hands into NetScaler. So I are very interested in learning a little bit more and hopefully become good as these guys are. So yeah, can't wait to hear and learn about these what is out there.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. So as we know, I mean, a lot of customers, they leverage their NetScalers for the gateway component, but then they would typically load balance their storefront servers for their DAS, their CDAD deployment, you know, their virtual apps and desktops. They want to make sure that the key components to their deployment in that fabric was highly available. So the NetScaler played a pretty great role in that. But over the years, you know, we've seen, I've seen everything under the sun flow through these things. So I've heard upwards of 75. I've heard 80% of all internet traffic at one point was flowing through these NetScalers. And I would get into some situations where, you know, that it was a pretty big shop they were hosting. I've seen a lot of websites for real estate. And that brings up another fun point, but a lot of different types of technologies that were serviced and delivered through the NetScaler. Not everybody had CDAD. Not everybody was hosting virtual apps and desktops. You know, sometimes these things are put in for purpose-built delivery components of customers' fabrics. So that's where you're kind of shifting over, where you're competing against the world from some of the other vendors that have delivery of and highly available solutions, such as NetScaler. So that's kind of where we'll steer some of these conversations, I think, in the future, especially over the next couple podcasts. But thought maybe a little icebreaker. I wanted to talk about maybe the coolest thing or the most odd technology or type of industry one of your customers might have been servicing their customers through NetScaler with. And one that pops up to mind for me was, it was in Florida. I won't say exactly where, but they had a lot of adult websites, like tens of thousands of them that were flowing through NetScaler. And it was like, I can't really look at anything that you got running through here, but I'll help you get your VIPs going. And then on the flip side of that, I saw basically the same thing, but the content on the West Coast was a lot of real estate websites. I mean, thousands of them that these folks were hosting inside of their colo with pretty substantially large SDXs that they were delivering those websites to their customers with. Anything off the top of your head, John or Justin, that might kind of come to mind as far as something that kind of stood out from customers that you've seen over the years?
Sure, I'll add to that. You know, if you do gambling of any sort, I know NetScalers, there's some NetScaler infrastructure behind that. If you like football of any sort, I know there's NetScaler infrastructure behind that. Let's just say if you like I don't know, Apple technologies of any sort, you might find some NetScaler technology behind that. So whether you think you need NetScaler or not, you're using it. Whether you want to or not, you're using it. But that brings to mind, you know, some customers who think, oh, well, I'm not going to go out and host tens of thousands of connections. You may or may not be hosting that type of infrastructure or that type of usage, but wouldn't it feel better to be able to do that versus have, let's go back to a car example here. You know, your budget only allows you to drive a Yugo. Let's go back to the 70s or 80s, and you got this little Yugo driving around town. That's what my budget can afford. Great, all fine and hunky-dory, but is that going to grow you into a family? Is that going to grow you over time? No, because that Yugo is going to die on your own road in about 2 years. Okay, so let's maybe squeeze the budget a little bit more and move up to, I don't know, a Volkswagen or even a lower end Ford or something like that. If you're not into the latest and greatest $100,000 pickup trucks or cars and stuff like that, or, you know, today's EVs that can cost you $100,000 plus. So whether you think that you need that resiliency, that type of, I don't know, let's put it in other terms, whether you're going to, if you're a fisherman or if you're a hunter or if you like Gucci clothes or something like that, don't look at the name. Look at what your money's buying you, the quality of that product, and how long it's going to last you.
Excellent. That's a great example. So Isrrael, anything that's ever stood out from you that you might have seen coming out of a customer data center, even if it didn't flow through NetScaler proper?
Yeah, no, sorry, I can't think about too much right now.
All good, all good.
Like I
Thanks
said,
for keeping
I'm
it
trying
honest.
to soak everything in. I mean, I have heard so many great things about NetScaler, but I think a lot of the people what are now, I believe that was John speaking. They're kind of were not known about it, right? And lately it's been changing names from Citrix to back now to NetScaler. I mean, that's I think a lot of our listeners will be a little bit confused with that, but it is a big play. It was a great mention about what you're buying.
Oh
And
yeah.
me personally, I didn't know that this was being implemented in those different type of solutions.
Oh yeah. Like
Very interesting.
John pointed out there, the Apple products, I know they got a data center about 50 miles north of me, right off the highway I live off of, and it's just slammed full of NetScalers up there. So, I mean, yeah, it's everywhere. So, I mean, I guess we pointed out some examples of stuff you might have seen, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if truly 70 to 80% somewhere in there of the internet's actually touching a NetScaler, it's pretty much covering everything. So back kind of to the article here that we were taking a look at, this load balancing with better performance, this JARH, again, the jump table assisted ring hash, is the load balancing algorithm that NetScaler has that's proprietary, that was built in-house. And it seems that gives the capabilities to that BIP to have that insight to those analytics to where it can perform better. So based on some of those examples that we gave, some folks really take their content switching and their load balancing to a whole another level where, they're pulling just the images from a certain pool of servers, they're pulling the content from another set of servers, and that knowledge and that insight that inside of those algorithms really kind of shows up as being a really important component. I guess the other option outside of JARH is more the CARP algorithm that a lot of the competition's using, and you'll see that in a lot of different places. But let's think of it at a real low level. If you're back to the example of a traditional gateway customer who is then authenticating in their users on the gateway and then bringing them into their storefront environments, you rarely had one. I can't remember the last time I saw like one storefront server in the back end. So, having that algorithm to be able to determine which node the user should be forwarded to really kind of comes into that's a big consideration to take into place, and something that's very important, especially when we're looking at scaling. So inside of this article we were chatting about, we're looking at quite a bit of improvement versus some of the competition. So this ADC consistent hashing algorithm, again, the JARH, is we've seen a lot of growth with the microservices and the stateless app developments, which are pretty common in these scenarios anymore. And a lot of those services can be, they're pretty lightweight when it comes down to like the traffic throughput, but the determination of where that traffic's going to be steered to comes back to this algorithm actually kicking in and determining that for us. Where do we see this kind of like heading in the future, do you think? Is things are scaling still better and moving more to the cloud options, where you're potentially paying more per cycle on the CPU, and having this kind of algorithm there, not only helping performance increase, but at the end of the day, it's quite possible that this is saving you money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also those like large cloud environments, that have hundreds of backend servers, like on e-commerce or anything like that, right? Those can get spun up dynamically. So you want to be able to have a load balancer that can handle that dynamic load if it gets increased, Christmas time, Prime Day, sometime in July. They're shopping days, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the JARH makes it it's a significant improvement over CARP. So
And looking at the CPU
cycles.
utilization, yeah, what 5x in this article, we're looking at savings. I mean, that's quite a bit of substantial cost savings when you're charged per cycle in the public clouds.
Well, yeah, and like the article points out, then that's extra CPU that you can do other stuff with, right? You know, save on NetScalers if you don't have to buy extra CPU.
Yeah, definitely. So average CPU utilization for 5,000 requests is an example that we're looking at here. Leveraging the JARH on the NetScalers, we're looking at about an option of around 9 in the chart that we're referencing here. And we'll share this article link when we post it as well. But with the CARP algorithm on the back end, it's running about 45% utilization on the CPU. So, I mean, that's about 36-point difference between utilization on that at around 5,000 requests per second. So that's pretty considerable savings there.
That's F5 that uses the CARP there for the comparison.
Yeah, definitely the F5 big IP solutions and similar products in that area. So that tells me that the CARP comes out of, and I haven't investigated it much here, but the CARP itself comes from more of an open source license that they're able to apply in different areas. You see anything about that?
About open source?
About the CARP, the history on the CARP. So see that means with that 5x efficiency savings that the single ADC can process the same amount of traffic but still have compute capacity left over. So kind of reinforcing what you're stating, Justin. So what does this mean for your production environments? They're telling us that the number of requests per second processed by apps, of course, varies very widely. But popular websites like Wikipedia or GitHub, you know, they process tens of thousands of requests per second. So moderately sized apps may process just a few hundred per second, but running this in the NetScaler, leveraging the JARH protocol can save and serve a broad range of customers with different workloads. So it's not just your Amazons of the world that can benefit from this, but that really, I guess, kind of comes back and helps with the sizing here. So a lot of scaling capabilities and benefits that are found here by this in-house and proprietary protocol that NetScaler uses.
I think part of the equation here is reducing the resource contention that you're going to have amongst your NetScaler infrastructure. Because if you've got, let's just say, you know, going back to your backend infrastructure or the applications that you're hosting, I mean, you can have additional features that are tied to based on the licensing that you have. Maybe you're going to have a web infrastructure that you're hosting. Okay, well, you're going to reduce your contention on your processing of that traffic itself, but you can also integrate security posture on your NetScaler, such as your WAF or bot mitigation that also uses CPU resources. So with the reduction of the contention for the CPU capacity, if you will, that's handling the traffic flow, you can take that same processing and really move it to additional resources or implement additional resources for either the same bang, if you will, for what you've already got invested, or maybe a reduced sizing of that infrastructure to save you some money. Now, based in the cloud itself, let's just talk about that. You have certain sizing requirements based on the type of compute in AWS or Azure based on the throughput that you need. Okay, well, that's going to be part of your CPU. That's also going to be the virtual NICs that are associated with that, so you can get that capacity. So with each additional NIC, you're also going to have additional processing requirements to process that traffic.
Yeah, that's a great example. So yeah, definitely there's a lot of, you know, I've been in many customers where they're like, I don't check that off. I only got like a VPX 200 equivalent, you know, that's not a very big box, and they're worried about checking off some of those additional features that they were a little hesitant to do because they were worried about that.
Not only that, I mean, you got to think about what's going on right now. There's that chip shortage, right?
Yeah.
And if they want to, if they cannot get that chip to be able to get into that new server, they want to maximize that what their current environment is. And by having this ADC is going to be able to allow them to boost that traffic. And they can wait for the new hardware to come in. And because, the world is going a little crazy right now, and this is the perfect example how to leverage that.
Yeah, more bang for your buck for sure. So that's not even on the physical appliances, but that plays into the virtualized VPXs as well as they're deployed.
Well, and about the VPXs too, because those don't have the dedicated SSL chips, right? They're just using regular CPU. This even, further to what John said, even if we're not implementing a firewall or bot mitigation or something, it's going to have more CPU cycle just for doing regular SSL. So if you've got a lower VPX, right? Maybe it's
no, that's exactly right. Yeah, a lot of customers have to offset and increase the amount of CPUs that they're deploying in their hypervisor environment and dedicating that potentially to those NetScalers. And if it was from another vendor, they need to pull that back a little bit and have the ability here to not have to go as big. Good points, good points. We've seen through the years here, this has definitely changed up a little bit, but this under the hood has been in place from what I understand all along. So this isn't necessarily a new feature by any means, but it's pointing out one of the differentiators between NetScaler and the competition out there in the field. And it sounds like, if you're looking at like application delivery controller, and you're shopping the different vendors, looking at the pros and cons, this is a pretty big component to take into consideration, where it's showing a additional value above and beyond what some of the other guys can bring to the table for you.
Now, I got a quick question for you guys. So there's probably some listeners right now listening, and I'm saying because I'm curious. If I'm actually looking into an ADC, what type of questions will you recommend for them to start looking into a product? And let's just not talk about NetScaler. I'm just talking about in general as an ADC to go to an environment. What are the key components that they should be looking into?
Well, that's a great question, Isrrael. I think at a high level is what is it they're actually trying to deliver to the users. I think that plays into it a lot. And also the application vendors' supportability of various load balancers and ADCs. So some of what I've seen over the years is that some application vendors have done a very good job about creating runbooks and setup guides to use with their applications. They might have it with like their 3 main go-to vendors that they support or have worked with and can validate that their application works on those application delivery controllers. So I think that's because at the end of the day, if you can't get the application or that service to that user, it's kind of a moot point of even trying to deliver it. So having that extra support I've found is super helpful as far as the success rate being very, very high when that is in play from that application vendor. I'd say that's probably my top one.
Justin or John, do you have anything to add to that?
I think, to expand on Chris's comment there, I think we need to evaluate, or the customer needs to evaluate what applications they're hosting and how those applications themselves are configured. A point taken here is that I had a customer who was replacing some IBM data powers, which should have been a simple process. However, the way their application was written, they were reusing some parts of the communication itself, which threw errors on the NetScaler. Well, come to find out, when they did that, they caused some intermittent problems that were traced back to, or supposedly traced back to, the server infrastructure. Well, it wasn't necessarily the server infrastructure that was tied to the communication flow. It was how the application itself was written. So, going back to that, what you're trying to do, it's not also what you're trying to do, it's how the applications themselves behave, how the authentication flow for those applications. So again, there's a lot that goes into it to now, but also what are you looking at over a period of time? Where are you at in 12 months? Where are you at in 24 months? And with today's technology, unfortunately, where are you at in next month? Where are you at in 2 months? So that's part of the equation as well.
Yeah, good example.
So what makes Citrix stand out more to other vendors? And I'm not trying to put any names out there, right? But what can you guys say that NetScaler is one of the reasons to start talking about that compared to the other ones? What really tops it off?
I think it's availability to provide over 4,000 features from a single operating system. I mean, we can do the content switching, we can do that web application firewall, traditional load balancing, gateway access for the CVAD environments. There's, again, 4,000 plus features, and if you raise that to its own power to multiply it, it's like pretty much infinite combinations that you can have, whereas some of the other vendors will break that out into siloed components that usually they work together, but at the same time, it's expanding the amount of stuff that you have to manage inside of your data center. I think that's been one of the key pieces that's really kept me coming back to NetScaler is like the go-to for this. Not only the number of features, but having that all available from that single operating system, which is something you're probably familiar with, Isrrael, with some of the other vendors that you work closely with. That operating system is pretty key when it comes to
definitely
standardizing on that and making sure that ground level technology is in place, and it's not, there's no real hidden components there. It's just with NetScaler having so much, you just got to know where to find it, but it's all in that same place.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it unbiased, right?
Sure.
I'm here to listen and observe. As you mentioned, I am familiar with other products. I haven't had the time, or I haven't had in my career be able to spend some time with NetScaler. I have heard of it, right? And I have heard so many great things, and especially being part of Citrix and whoever has Citrix environment, I heard this is a really great solution to be implemented because they're working as a whole new one platform, I guess you want to call it, rather than seeing it as an add-on from another vendor. It's pretty much the same vendor.
Oh yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody needs some kind of high availability technology for the services that they provide. I mean, we're way past that in our journey in IT and even OT. You know, we want that high availability across the board, and taking into consideration in some circumstances that you're paying for that CPU usage. Again, really kind of comes back to this article pointing out that there's a key differentiator here between the JAR and the CARP protocol or algorithms being leveraged for that. So the CARP piece, I kind of did a little research on that while we were talking about it and giving some examples there. So that's the cache array routing protocol. And load balance and HTTP request across multiple proxy cache servers is what it does. So it's generating a hash for each URL request. So that's what it seems to be a little bit different here with the JAR. Don't need to generate for each one. Consistent hashing is in place and offers that stateful persistence for your apps. So thus, that's how it's improving the performance with the lower operational costs. kind of tied it all together there.
I just wanted to mention back to Israel's question about, like, you know, what's the driving factor behind this? I mean, historically, it was always Citrix virtual apps and desktops, right? If you wanted to provide remote access for it.
Yeah, and you wanted support for it. Yeah.
And you want support for it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, definitely. That was a big component of it.
So, I mean, that was right off the top, that was a no-brainer for, you know, a lot of customers in that regard, to move into it. But to Chris's point, yeah, I can do one of 4,000 other things as well. And most oftentimes I go into environments and customers who are even licensed for features like web app firewall, for example, not even used, not even the basic signatures that you can apply globally just to block all the bad stuff or stuff we know is bad. So there's a lot of room in there for.
And then you always hate hearing that if there was like a competing technology that they had sitting right next to the NetScaler, and it's like, you know, you got that on there.
Right.
There's no reason to have this additional environment. Well, that team runs this. We don't run that. We're in charge of this. So, oh yeah, different team. I think we've all seen that multiple times over the years.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, just come back around. This is how we're, you know, I'm going to save you a bunch of money real quick right here. When's that thing up for renewal? Don't renew it. For 8 hours of consulting time, we could have that whole environment moved over to the NetScalers. Goodness gracious. Well, there's some good examples. I think what are we looking at? About quarter till. I know you got to drop here, Justin. But yeah. Well, thanks for being here, Justin. Super appreciate it. Any closing remarks before you have to hop off?
Nothing memorable, so I'll save it. I'll maybe have something next time in a couple of weeks when I'm back. So
all right, very good.
Pleasure being
thanks,
here,
Justin.
and I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right, thanks, Justin. And John, as we wrap up here, anything that kind of stood out today, or you want to kind of wrap up with?
No, I'm good. I appreciate the time. Hopefully, we haven't bored everybody with our chitter chatter here, and that they were able to gain some insight into the JARH methodology of load balancing on the NetScaler itself, and some valuable information in the rest of the conversation. So that's pretty much about it.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you being here. And Isrrael, thank you very, very much. I'm sure you'll find a lot of good insights and interesting things here in the near future. So appreciate you being on this one as well.
Yeah, check out the NetScaler community portal out there. You can always glean additional information out there. There's a lot of blogs out there. There's as well as some NetScaler lab out there. So there's a lot of useful information out there on the community.
Yeah, there is. And I'm very interested in seeing how we're revamping this in a lot of different areas, because it's going to come down to, you know, not only the NetScaler brand itself and how things are going to market, but the logo is going to change. The certification path's going to change. A lot of cool things. Get to kind of start back over from scratch. And we're looking forward to being a part of this journey with the NetScaler. So, guys, I appreciate you being a part of this. Hopefully you can join us again soon. And look forward to continuing this path as we kick off this new series focused on NetScaler. And we'll do it again soon.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks for being here.